The mercy of God, like an inexhaustible stream, flows through the lives of all who open their hearts to receive it. It is not merely a concept in the scriptures, but a living truth that touches the deepest recesses of the human soul. From the stories told in the Holy Book, through the sermons of pastors, to the colorful legends of folklore, this mercy remains a guiding beacon for the lost and a source of comfort for the brokenhearted. It is not just about forgiveness, but also about restoration, healing, and transformation, turning the ashes of failure into the radiant light of hope. Once upon a time, in a kingdom nestled deep in the forest, there lived a king named Nathaniel, renowned for his compassion. Though Nathaniel ruled a powerful nation, he considered himself a servant of his people. One day, a thief was caught stealing gold from the royal treasury. The thief was a young man, his eyes filled with fear and remorse. All the royal advisors demanded that King Nathaniel execute the man to set an example. Instead of punishment, the king ordered the thief to be brought before his throne. "Do you have anything to say before I pass judgment?" the king asked calmly. The young man bowed his head and trembled as he replied, "Your Majesty, I do not deserve forgiveness. I only wanted to save my family from starvation, but my actions were wrong. Please punish me according to the law." The king gazed at the man for a long moment before speaking gently. "You have done wrong, and you need to make amends. But rather than punishment, I will give you a chance. You shall work in my garden, planting trees and tending to the fruits. If you prove your loyalty, I will consider this matter forgotten." The young man was astonished and wept. From that day forward, he worked diligently in the royal gardens, and over time, became one of the most honest and trustworthy people in the kingdom. His story spread across the land, and the people came to understand the mercy of King Nathaniel, a symbol of compassion that not only forgives but also fosters renewal. This story reflects the teaching in the scriptures. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. Mercy goes beyond erasing faults. It creates opportunities for transformation and a better life. God, like King Nathaniel, is always ready to offer us a fresh start if we are willing to accept it. In another distant land, a tale is often told of a boat builder named Jonas. He was a man in his 60s who lived alone in a small house by the sea. Without a family of his own, Jonas dedicated his life to building sturdy boats for the villagers. One day, a fierce storm struck, destroying many homes and ruining the boat Jonas was repairing. Sitting amidst the wreckage, Jonas felt a deep sense of loss and despair. As he prayed, a group of villagers came to him, bringing pieces of wood they had salvaged from broken boats. They said, "Jonas, we know you have lost much, but you have always helped us in hard times. Let us help you rebuild." Touched by their kindness, Jonas began working with the villagers. Together, they built a new boat that was not only larger, but also more beautiful and robust than any before. When the boat was completed, Jonas told the villagers, "The storm took many things away, but it also brought kindness and love among us. God has used what was broken to create something greater." That boat became more than a means of transportation. It became a symbol of unity and mercy. Jonas's story reminds us of God's words. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. No matter how much we lose, God always finds a way to transform suffering into something beautiful. He never leaves us alone in the storm, but accompanies, sustains, and guides us. Not only are there stories of forgiveness and healing, but God's mercy is also revealed in the seemingly smallest acts. Once, in a poor village on the plains, there was a woman named Ruth. She was a widow living with her young daughter in a simple straw house. Ruth had little, but every day she set aside a portion of her meals to give to an elderly neighbor who lived alone across the stream. One harsh winter, Ruth realized that her food supplies were nearly depleted. She faced a difficult decision: keep the last bit of food for her daughter or continue sharing with her neighbor. After a night of prayer, Ruth chose to bring her neighbor the last meal they had. She placed it on the table, smiled, and said, "God will provide for my daughter and me, as he always has." The very next day, a convoy of relief supplies unexpectedly arrived in the village, bringing food and warm clothing. Ruth and her daughter not only received sustenance, but also met new friends who had heard her story and were moved by her unwavering trust in God. Ruth's act of mercy not only saved her neighbor, but also opened the door for the entire village to receive help. Ruth's story reminds us of Jesus' teaching: give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Luke 6:38. God's mercy is not only in grand miracles, but is present in every small act of kindness. He uses the simplest gestures to demonstrate his boundless love. In another story, in a bustling city where life seemed swept away by an endless flow, there was a man named Thomas. He was a watchmaker who spent his life in a small workshop, filled with the glow of oil lamps and the ticking of countless clocks. Thomas had no family, but he never felt lonely because he believed that every watch he repaired carried someone's story. One day, a young man entered his shop with a broken watch. Its glass face was shattered, and its strap was worn. The young man explained that the watch had belonged to his late father, whom he dearly loved. "I know this watch can't be fixed, but I can't bear to throw it away. It's all I have left of my father," he said with a choked voice. Thomas took the watch, examining its cracks and wear. "Do you believe that everything, even what seems broken, can be restored?" Thomas asked. The young man remained silent, unsure how to respond. Thomas began working, carefully disassembling the tiny components, polishing them, and replacing the non-functional parts. After hours of meticulous labor, the watch ticked again. "What is broken is not the end," Thomas said. "Sometimes renewal begins from the fragments." The young man moved to tears, held the restored watch, and felt as if his father was near. Thomas's story is not only a lesson in patience and skill, but also a powerful testament to mercy. As Scripture says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. God's mercy extends not only to the perfect but also to the broken, inviting them to return and find restoration. Mercy is also told in the story of a young woman named Anna, who lived in a village near an ancient forest. Anna was a talented artist, but she constantly felt that her work was not good enough to match other artists. Every painting she created, she erased, believing it was flawed. One day, an old traveler stopped in her village, heard of Anna's talent, and decided to visit her. The traveler stepped into the gallery, where discarded paintings were scattered across the floor. He picked up a painting Anna had created of the forest, where sunlight pierced through lush green leaves. "This painting is beautiful," he said. Anna blushed and replied, "No, it's not perfect. I can't let anyone see it." The traveler smiled and said, "You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to paint a flawless masterpiece for it to have value. God sees us the same way. He doesn't seek perfection. He seeks the heart." Those words changed Anna's perspective. She began to see her works as gifts, not as something to prove. Through this, she understood that God's mercy is a reminder that each of us is valuable, despite our flaws. As Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11, verse 28. His mercy doesn't demand perfection. It only asks us to open our hearts to receive it. He does not disdain our weaknesses, but uses them to demonstrate his power and love. The world is full of stories of God's mercy, stories that not only inspire but also transform the lives of those who listen and believe. No matter the era or circumstances, his mercy remains unchanged. It is ever present, ever guiding, and ever inviting each of us. When we open our hearts to embrace his mercy, we will see that no suffering is too great, no mistake too deep, for God to heal or forgive. God's mercy is an unquenchable flame, a guiding light for the lost, and a refreshing stream for parched souls. It not only transforms individual lives but also spreads through communities, uniting people with love and forgiveness. The story of mercy never ends because it is written in every act, every moment, and every heart that opens to his love.